All right, so let's get started. The format is different because we don't have time during lunch, so there will be no discussion, just an opportunity to hear three really interesting, challenging, short takes and very short introductions. So also the schedule is different because Tina Nabachi couldn't make it because she's sick. So we found some kind of replacement, and we'll see how it goes. I might as well give away the secret. It's Peter Levine. Say Peter, some people get. All right, so we start with Shelby Brown, who's the Executive Administrator of State of Connecticut's Office of Governmental Accountability, and who is also has perhaps the widest experience of various democratic practices of anybody here. And I just offended a few of you, but arguably that is the case. And the form of introduction we agreed on is, here is Shelby.
Thank you. Thank you. That was really funny. And I did ask for that. I sure did. So I was asked to speak about my experience creating and engaging opportunities to improve our unique form of democracy. And I'll start by saying that I agree with something my dear friend Nancy wrote, which is that the American democracy works best when everyone is equipped and knowledgeable, and also has the influence and inclination to be at the table. I think that that is true. As I think about my own work and participation in co-creating this democracy, I think about the four streams or domains over which I have been involved. Not every domain, but four, for sure. I've been involved in social justice work. I've been involved in reformation of higher education. I've been involved in teaching, and I've also been involved now in government public administration. In each of these cases, the work has fundamentally been about me. It's been about where was I in my career, where was I in my thinking, what was it that mattered to me, and therefore, how could I use my influence, my power to engage the questions that mattered. So of course, as I was thinking about this, and some of my good colleagues were helping me sort of frame this discussion, it brought me back to my roots. I am a PK. Anybody in the room know what that stands for? Preacher's kid. You got it. You got it. And I grew up in a very traditional Pentecostal church. And one of the big parts of that church is the history of music and the role of music in the worship service. And of course, the form very often is a form called call and response. Anybody know what that is? All right. All right. Call and response is significant in so many ways because it functions as a connection between the preacher and the people. So the preacher knows that you hear what he's saying because, or what she's saying, because you respond. There you go. It's significant too, because it helps to share the power of the discussion. The preacher and the congregation are creating the moment together. It's not just about what the preacher has to say, but it's about how the audience is receiving it and what the audience will do with it. There you go. It's also significant because it reflects upon the mission of the church, which is, in my case for sure, about introducing people to the voice of their God and encouraging them to respond. So call and response became the theme for me of really what have I done with my work in democracy. So my experience in democracy was really a series of calls and responses. Being called to some work, some effort, some way to form and frame my energy, and responding to that by actually doing. Very much like what we talk about, like in so many of our efforts, our energy, our work, you know, we tell people we want you to engage in deliberative discussion, dialogue, whatever we use, whatever term we use, but then we want you to act. So the call is come talk, the response is go act. So for many years, I saw I looked around in my city, which is Hartford, Connecticut, and I saw that there were a lot of things that were wrong. I saw that there were a lot of people, particularly people of color, who did not have access to power. They did not have a voice in what happened in the city. One of the major projects when I was a student in Trinity, and I looked around and I saw, the college president got all this publicity for establishing this community partnership with the hospital and with other institutions in the city and reforming the entire west end of the city and making a bigger campus for Trinity. But I also saw how many people who had been long-term residents of that neighborhood who got displaced, and there was no opportunity for them to say whether or not they wanted a bigger campus for Trinity or a partnership with the university. They never got a chance. I saw that, and I engaged my power, which was the education that I had, the voice that I had, and I became a community organizer, and I started working with people on issues of affordable housing and economic justice. That was important to me, and I found the work, of course, enormously challenging, but also enormously rewarding. As an actor in the democracy, again, I used my voice and my courage to open doors for my people and to help. My image of it was, I'd open the door just enough to get my foot in and then turn around and say, come on, y'all, we in now, So later on, I found myself at a place where I was sufficiently educated and, of course, needing to make more money and looking for ways to transform the work that I cared about to an opportunity for employment. And I thought very critically about where could I go and what could I do. And what I found was, I found myself called to work in the community college system. In the state of Connecticut, we have 12 community colleges, and I worked in administration in the system office for them. But I worked with faculty members who were interested in doing student engagement work. I worked with organizers of I'm stuttering, but basically the people who worked on economic development. You kind of get what I'm talking about. Basically trying to figure out how does the college serve the community and working with the industry and finding out what industry wanted and that kind of thing. I worked with them to try to find deliberative ways to resolve the problems, to come up with what is this system going to put its effort and energy into. I valued the unique nature of the community college as a place where democracy could be taught, but then also practiced. I really took seriously the idea that the community college is the people's college. And I looked for ways that the people could be represented more significantly in the governance of their institutions. That brought me to the third domain, which was teaching. And in this domain, I worked with first-year students and taught what was essentially the skills that they needed to be successful in their entire college experience. But I used the frame of social justice to communicate the information they needed to be successful as students. So I started to talk about and teach about agency and about voice and about power and about the importance of students thinking about whether or not the institution that they depended upon would be there when they thought they would be ready to graduate. Now, most community college students are also working or doing something else in their life that makes for them a longer path to the college education. So they don't always finish in 2 years. In fact, if they finished in 3 or 4, it is more the norm. In the course of that 3 or 4 years, the question is, will the institution that you study at still be here? Will you still be able to get in? Will you be able to get the financial aid that you need to pay for your college experience? What makes you think you'll have it if you don't participate now in making sure it will be here? And that ignited the passions of quite a few students who became then active in governance for the institution, advocacy for student voice, and now Connecticut has, I don't take personal responsibility for this, but Connecticut has a board of regents for all of higher education. We experienced incredible transformational change in how higher education is organized in Connecticut, and students sit on the board of regents with equal voice to the other industry leaders and higher ed leaders out there. So equipping the students to be there and to make their issues and their presence known was part of how I executed my ability to work in the democracy and make sure that the democracy functioned well. Sort of how I helped respond to the call of co-creating the democracy. The final domain that I'll talk about is my current role. Again, I found myself at a place where it was like, okay, I want to be able to replicate myself, to be able to take the information and the influence that I have to another level. Where do I go and how do I do that? And I found the opportunity in this other very unique entity in Connecticut, which is called the Office of Governmental Accountability. I'm quite sure no other state has anything like it, only in Connecticut. But it is a consolidated effort, 9 watchdog agencies all under one umbrella, every agency involved in some distinct aspect of watching government to ensure that we have good government. My role is agency head, so I'm the commissioner of this agency, but my real role, because I'm a community organizer, is to figure out ways that the people get to exercise their voice more potently, more visibly, through the Office of Governmental Accountability. So those are the 4 domains over which I've exercised this privilege. I've responded to this call, the multiple calls to be involved in the democracy and also to make an impact. And there are a number of things that I think I was able to be successful in doing very, very quickly. Being a diverse representation, someone who does not look like every other commissioner in the state or every other teacher in the institution, someone who just looks different. People don't know for sure that I'm different, but I sure do look different, okay? Being there has made a difference. And I think for all of us that are engaged in the work, wherever you are or whatever level, remember that that does matter. It still matters. We still have not achieved all that we need to achieve with respect to diversity, racial equity, gender equity in this country. We're not there yet. So it still matters. I look around and I see, like I remember many years ago being at a table where people who had practiced in their own little corners of the world deliberative democracy or some form thereof, I remember them coming together and I remember very distinctly them saying, I looked all over for her like mind, and I had a hard time finding one. And there at that table, they found like minds. Look around the room. There are a lot more like minds today than there were then, or at least y'all crawling out of your closets now. There are more open spaces for discussion and for deliberation and for the public to participate. There are, and that work makes a difference. When I think about the butterfly effect that I feel like I've had, I look at my daughter, who is a civil engineer with a humongous afro, and she goes around, she works on issues of water, public water, and she talks about environmental justice in the water. And it's a tiny little place in the world, but she's making a difference by engaging other young people, other black women, other people who just want to know in the conversation about what does that environmental justice issue have to do with me and how can I make a difference and impact it. She's engaging them in that conversation. I think of the butterfly effect and I think, okay, there's a little ripple I might have had an influence on. I look at my niece who is a single mother. She has a high school education. She's a brilliant person, but has done no more academically. And then I see her involvement in the political process. I see her on Facebook engaging conversations about who's going to be elected and how come it's important to get Hillary in and what does it mean for women and what does it mean for this nation for us to make it happen. I hear her engaging that conversation. I watch her elevating it to a level and I say, gee, that's another ripple. That's why this work is important. It's not all about electoral politics, but it certainly is about voice and influence. So I suspect, I will close. I suspect that in some way, the reason that we're all here at this conference is that we have all heard in some way, shape, or form a call. And in any way, if I can encourage you, I would say that the most important thing is that we continue to respond in whatever way, whatever we call it, that we just continue to respond. Thank you.